The courtroom is still, but the atmosphere is denser than stone. Janelle sits at the center of it all, her voice shaking, but not broken, saying words no one ever imagined they'd hear. I'm ready for my spiritual divorce. What does that actually signify? Why now, after all those years of silence and sorrow? Tonight we draw back the curtain on a war that was never waged in the legal system, but in faith, family, and betrayal. And before we get deeper into this, let me know, in your opinion, does a spiritual divorce have as much power as a legal one? Sound off in the comments, and let's start this process together. The novel starts not with papers being served or lawyers retained, but with a woman at the precipice of a life she believed would be forever. Janelle Brown was not merely walking out on a marriage, she was walking out on a system of belief, a world shared on the premise of eternal togetherness. And whereas Christine, years earlier, loudly claimed her freedom, Janelle hesitated. She waited, she struggled, and she wore the silence as a heavy coat that could not be removed. When the cameras went dark in 2022, the headlines declared one thing: Janelle and Kody are separated. But behind closed doors, the reality was much more complex. In Sister Wives' universe, separation is not liberation. There is no court document stamped, no judicial proclamation dissolving the marriage. Rather, it is a war waged in the soul, a spiritual tie that cannot be seen, yet bears the burden of shackles. Consider it in the Brown family's belief. A marriage is greater than contracts or rings. It's holy, it's forever. To destroy that isn't so easy as to leave. It's like attempting to leave your own shadow. And because of this, for years Janelle labeled herself as separated but never divorced. But something changed. In whispers and in flashes, she spoke differently. Not with rage, but with precision. Not with terror, but with determination. The question wasn't if she could move on, but if she was willing to let go, not just of Kody, but of all that marriage had stood for. And here's the reality that entices us all. Sometimes the toughest divorces are the ones you can't see in black and white. Because what Janelle was going through wasn't about attorneys, it was about identity, faith, and taking back her voice. But before we proceed further, let me ask you, if you were attached to a belief that no longer worked for you, would you leave, or would you remain to maintain peace? The quiet of that decision was fleeting. With news out that Janelle would talk of a spiritual divorce, the waves reverberated to every quadrant of the family. For years she'd been the rock, the soothing voice, the spouse who didn't yell or storm off. But now her words had more power than any judge's gavel. In Kody's world, love was supposed to last beyond this lifetime. Eternal bonds, eternal families, eternal promises. Janelle's voice cracked that foundation. And when a foundation cracks, everyone living on it feels the shake. Picture the scene: Janelle, sitting in a serene interview, hands clasped, eyes far away. She does not hurry her words. Rather, she allows them to come with the weight of one ending decades of silence. I wasn't ready earlier, she says quietly, but now I am. Those are simple words, but they're a thunderclap. What she's actually saying is that she has mourned, battled, and at last mustered the strength to burn the last strand binding her to Kody. And this is where the suspense thickens. Kody never thought Janelle would go this far. To him, her quiet strength was a sign he believed meant devotion. He interpreted her silence as stamina, and not as remoteness. But all along that silence was brewing for a storm. And when she said those words to him, it was too late to go back. It's here where things come to a head. Because in polygamy, if one wife really walks out, it doesn't terminate a relationship. It redefines the whole family. Now all of a sudden, Robyn is not only the last wife standing, she's clinging to a dream everyone else has moved on from. And Meri, Christine, they've long since mapped out their own futures, and Kody's kingdom is now more like rubble than a house. Sometimes the most terrifying moment isn't the one where someone screams goodbye, it's when they whisper it, with no reserve left. That's what Janelle delivered to us. But if her voice rattled the family, it rattled the viewers too. And here's the one question that makes us lean in. What got her from indecision to conviction? What changed between 2022 and today? If you're still with me, let's lean closer. Because the answer isn't just about Janelle, it's about the secrets buried in the timeline that led here. The clock rewinds to late 2022. On camera, Janelle looked calm, composed, and even forgiving. But behind that calm exterior was a storm that few people could see. The cameras captured her separation from Kody as a statement, clean, almost clinical. But life rarely unravels so neatly. Remember those moments, Janelle in front of her RV, telling Kody she wanted to be on her own. Kody pushing back, upset that his dream of domination was eroding. To the viewers, it seemed like just another fight in a series of fights. But to Janelle, it was the first fracture in the wall she had constructed to survive. Christine's departure had already unsettled her. Christine had been daring, nearly ferocious, in announcing her spiritual divorce much earlier than Janelle would even venture to utter the words. But Janelle was not Christine. She bore things differently. While Christine battled with flames, Janelle survived with silence. And at times, silence wounds deeper. Years passed, headlines changed. Christine remarried. Meri quietly disappeared onto her own trajectory. Robyn held fast to what remained. And Janelle, she remained in that limbo middle ground, estranged yet still held together by unseen strings of faith. Here's the scary reality. She could have legally walked away at any moment, but spiritually, that attachment remained. It's easy to leave a marriage on paper. It's difficult to unwind your soul from the vows of forever. And this is where the tension peaks. Because something occurred during those silent months that pushed her from uncertainty into absoluteness. She has never told us everything, but the chronology tells. She saw Christine flourish on her own. She saw her children align themselves, some moving further out from Kody's circle. She bore the burden of invisibility in a family she once helped keep intact. By the time 2024 arrived, the decision wasn't about leaving Kody. It was about reclaiming herself. Saying "I'm ready" wasn't just a statement about the past. It was a battle cry for the future. And sometimes the bravest words aren't shouted in anger, but spoken softly when no fear is left. But here's where the tension ratchets up. What does ready really mean? Ready to forgive? Ready to break up? Or ready to share something even more profound that we don't know yet? Hang in there with me here, because in the next section, we reveal not only Janelle's decision, but how her decision revealed fissures in the very foundation of the sister wives' family. When Janelle finally stated her spiritual divorce, it wasn't idle words floating on thin air. It was a punch that reverberated through every segment of the Brown family. And if Christine's departure was a spark, Janelle's move was fuel on an already blazing fire. Kody's response? A combination of anger and shock. He had talked himself into believing that Janelle was stable, steadfast, perhaps even faithful in ways Christine and Meri were not. To him, Janelle's silent strength had always been evidence that she would never really leave. So when she did, the hurt felt sharper than any fight. Imagine the scene, Kody walking back and forth, his voice trembling with rage and despair. He demands she doesn't realize the burden of eternal covenants. He begs that divorcing herself spiritually is to turn her back not only on him, but on God himself. His words are bitter, but behind them lies terror. Terror of being left behind. Terror of seeing his kingdom fall kingdom by kingdom, wife by wife. And Robyn senses the walls closing in. She's already the last wife legally wedded to him, already burdened with the guilt of being the favorite. Seeing Janelle leave sends her into a panic. She grasps tighter, wails louder, pleads with Kody to realize they can still salvage the remnants. But in the silence that falls after Janelle's words, even Robyn understands. The tide has shifted. This is where the emotional burden weighs in, for the betrayal in polygamy isn't so much about love. It's about identity. It's about violating a vow that was meant to last forever. And yet, in Janelle's tranquility, there is no rage, no yelling, only determination. She does not attack, does not struggle, does not destroy him. Instead, she merely says that she is prepared. And with that, she retrieves every shred of control she had previously relinquished. The tension isn't in whether or not Kody will fight. It's in how far he will go to attempt to pull her back around him. And the audience is left to wonder, what will Kody do in order to maintain his final pieces of power? Because sometimes the greatest wars aren't waged with fists or attorneys, they are waged with silence, conviction, and the strength to leave. And as Janelle makes that decision, cracks in the family spread. Christine and Meri are already gone. Janelle's voice is now added to theirs. And Kody? He's standing alone on the ashes of a kingdom he used to claim was impenetrable. But here's the question that hangs in the air. Is this truly the end of Janelle's saga, or merely the start of a battle none of us anticipated? Wait with me, because in the second half we explore how Janelle's choice didn't only liberate her, but revealed truths about the whole Brown family that might turn everything around. The fallout from Janelle's announcement had only just begun to settle when questions started spilling out, not only from viewers but from within the family itself. Because when one leaves, it makes everyone else take a look in the mirror. Christine had departed loudly, defiantly, almost in victory. Meri had departed softly, as if vanishing into the wings of a play that no longer needed her. But Janelle's decision bore weight that was other. She had always been the balance point, the one who made the system appear level even when it was beginning to break. Without her, the facade crumbled. And that's when the truths came to light. Discussions previously whispered now entered into the open. Children spoke more outspokenly about favoritism they had observed. Old pains, favoritism, abandonment, shattered trust, resurfaced again. Janelle's bravery functioned as a spark, setting voices previously silenced ablaze. Kody, meanwhile, wasn't just losing wives, he was losing the narrative. His once proud vision of a united plural family now looked like fragments of a story he couldn't control. Each wife's exit wasn't just a rejection of him as a husband, it was a rejection of the dream he had spent decades building. And Robyn, always tears in her eyes, was left in the impossible position of defending a dream nobody else wanted anymore. Her weeping increased, her begging more desperate, as if she could glue shards of glass together with only her fingers. Here's the thing that strikes deepest. Janelle's choice didn't end just a marriage. It exposed that the Brown family had been broken far longer than anybody would own up to. Because if the steady wife could leave, then the dream was really over. To longtime fans of the family, the collapse felt less show and more like a tragedy unfolding in slow motion. Fans weren't just wondering, what happens next? They were wondering, how much of what we thought we knew about this family was ever true? And that's where the suspense truly begins, when a tale you had imagined writing yourself suddenly rewrites itself in your own mind. But here's the frightening part. Janelle might have closed one book, but in so doing, she opened another. And the reality of that next book might be even more explosive than the divorce itself. Stick with me, for in the next section, we get into the emotional toll of Janelle's freedom, and how leaving a marriage of faith can make you feel like leaving behind your own soul. Freedom is a strong word, but sometimes it doesn't feel like celebration. For Janelle, the moment she declared herself spiritually divorced wasn't just about breaking away from Kody. It was about tearing herself away from a belief system she had carried for decades. Imagine spending your entire life thinking that love wasn't meant just for this world, but for forever. That every decision, every sacrifice, every drop of tear was leading to something forever. And then one day, knowing that promise was shattered, that the forever you were given no longer existed. That's the emotional toll Janelle had to bear. The freedom cost wasn't merely the release of Kody. It was the release of the part of herself that believed in him, that believed in the ideal, that believed in forever. It's here the weight is felt most, because this isn't simply a reality TV plot. This is the pain of identity. Who is Janelle beyond the identity of wife? Beyond the family unit that she contributed to and protected for so many years? And this is where it gets real. Sometimes going away doesn't feel like a win. It feels like sorrow. Sorrow for the years that were spent. Sorrow for the children in the middle. Sorrow for the belief that what you had was forever, only to see it shatter in your hands. But interwoven in that sorrow is something more powerful. Resilient. Janelle doesn't crumble with rage or fall into bitterness. Instead, she hardens, quietly, resolutely. She starts talking about self-reliance, about quiet, about being by herself for the first time in her adult years. And this is the sentence that keeps us trapped. When the weight of remaining is greater than the risk of departure, that is where liberty is born. For Janelle, that liberty was bought at a high price. It was scarred. It was lonely. But it was also something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Control of her own destiny. But even as she moves forward, the shadow of her past lingers close behind. Because a spiritual divorce does not simply dissolve a marriage. It raises questions that haunt long after the words are uttered. What becomes of the ties she once declared eternal? What becomes of the faith she once thought would never betray her? And maybe the greatest question of all, is it possible that Janelle can ever really move on when part of her heart remains attached to a commitment that was forever? Don't go anywhere. because in the second half we discover how Janelle's bravery isn't only changing her life, it's changing the legacy of the Brown family. By the time Janelle's words settled into the air, "I'm ready," the sister wives family no longer looked like a family at all. The dream of unity that once stretched across 4 households had collapsed into fragments. But Janelle's choice wasn't just personal. It became a turning point in the story of plural marriage itself. For years, the Browns were put forward as the face of contemporary polygamy, a family founded on faith, love, and sacrifice. They were meant to demonstrate that this type of union could work, that it wasn't all about jealousy or manipulation. And for a few years, Janelle was the quiet demonstration of that. The level-headed calm who made chaos containable. But as she turned away, the fantasy collapsed. If even the steadfast wife, the one who didn't argue, who didn't make demands, who kept her head down and labored, if even she was not strong enough to take it anymore, then what did that tell us about the foundation? Christine's departure was a spark. Meri's exit was a whisper. But Janelle's was a statement that polygamy, at least in the Browns' world, was broken beyond repair. And here's the legacy. Janelle's courage didn't just reshape her life. It reshaped the story of the sister wives forever. Kody, the former focal point of the empire, now sits alone almost, grasping for Robyn, as his kids drift farther away, and the viewers observe the dream crumble in front of them in real time. The man who previously was so sure about everlasting families is fighting to maintain even a single one. Robyn, too, is burdened with this legacy. Once the favorite, now the last stitch of a tale that does not hold together anymore. Her weeping, once perceived as emotional, now appears desperate. For the truth is straightforward. The kingdom she'd known was already lost. And the children? They've seen it all. The fights, the tears, the breakups. They've grown up in a tale intended to demonstrate unity, but instead expose division. Their voices, louder than ever, wonder if polygamy ever even was about family, or if it was just about one man exerting too much control. This is where things get darkest, because the Brown legacy isn't about faith or the afterlife anymore. It's about what happens when belief runs headlong into reality, and reality prevails. Janelle's choice was the turning point, not only for her, but for the show, for the family, for the culture they represented. But here's the question that still remains. If the sister wives fantasy is really over, what's next? What does freedom look like for Janelle, for Christine, for Meri? And what does collapse look like for Kody and Robyn? Hold on to me, because in the end we pull it all together. And I'm going to leave you with a question that only you, the audience, can respond to. And so we come to the conclusion of Janelle's journey, not with the crash of a gavel, not with a ruling of the law, but with the soft authority of words spoken from the heart. I'm ready. Those 2 words might sound insignificant, but to Janelle they had decades of significance. They ended a marriage that never was, but always was. They released her from vows of forever that had become shackles, and they remade not only her life, but the tale of the sister wives family forevermore. Christine had already paved the way. Meri had already drifted away to her own private solitude. But it was Janelle's quiet, firm voice that sealed the fact the dream had vanished. The family was destroyed, and there was only freedom now, however difficult. Kody is left with Robyn alone, a king with no kingdom, holding on to a dream no one has faith in. Robyn, desperate and distraught, sees the family she gave up for shattered in her hands, and the children, formerly grown in the spirit of oneness, now bear their own reality, forged by wounds, remembrance, and survival. This is when the story ceases to be solely about one woman's divorce. It becomes about us all, because Janelle's decision challenges a question. What do we do when the life we've created no longer aligns with the life we require? Do we hold onto it for commitment, or do we leave in pursuit of harmony? For Janelle, it was unequivocal. She walked away. She mourned, she recovered, and she took her independence. And in the process, she provided us with not only a tale of estrangement, but a tale of strength. And perhaps that's the final lesson of the sister wives drama, that sometimes the greatest act of bravery isn't grabbing hold, it's releasing. Now I'd like to hear from you. Janelle refers to it as a spiritual divorce. Do you imagine that has the same resonance as a legal divorce? Or do you think complete freedom only exists when both heart and law are shattered? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because this is a story that doesn't end with me. It ends with all of us, still questioning the questions Janelle dared to speak.